My name is William del Pilar. Some of you know me as a conservative Latino. I'm better known as a fantasy sports pioneer. And with me is a fellow pioneer, Big John. Let's welcome him aboard and let's get down to it. It is Super Bowl weekend. Big John, how you doing? And let's start it out with, who do you like?
All right, William, as you know, Big John, that's me. And I also run a site called Nerd Fantasy Sports. So my nerds have been on this for the last 2 weeks. We've been analyzing the numbers, trying to get a read on the Super Bowl. And I got to tell you, it's not just the Super Bowl. Leading up to the Super Bowl, my nerds were very, very helpful to me. So I am proud to announce, William, I can't lose in this Super Bowl. And I'll tell you why. This is not a boast. I'll tell you why. A couple of months ago, we did an analysis on the site and we came up with the team that we thought gave us the best risk return on winning the Super Bowl, a futures bet back in October. Back then, I put some money down on the LA Rams to win the Super Bowl at plus 800. So for those that aren't aware, plus 800 means 8-to-1 odds. So $1 gets you back 8. All right. So that was my bet. That bet is still good. So it is good. And it's the only futures bet I put. So like for people who are saying, well, it doesn't count if you bet on half the teams, right? Right. I get that. I only bet the Rams because our model said they have, believe it or not, we called it, they had the highest probability of winning the Super Bowl at the best return. Now, what does that mean for me? It means tomorrow, I've already put my money down on the Bengals plus 4.5. Why? Because I can't lose now. As a matter of fact, there's about a 12% chance that I'll win both bets. Here's how. The Rams win the game.
John, so for those who don't gamble, what does the Bengals at 4.5 mean?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Bengals plus 4.5 means that if you bet on the Bengals as the underdog, you win if the score is within 4.5 points.
Either way?
Yeah. So, well, if the Bengals win the game outright, you win the bet. But if they lose by less than 4.5 points, meaning 4 points or less, then you still win.
So in essence, you're getting 4.5 points.
You're getting
given to the Bengals to start the game.
So the game starts off with the Bengals winning 4.5-0. Think of it. That's another good way of putting it. So those odds are minus 110 or $10 will get you nine back. Okay. So by putting money on the Bengals strategically, what have I done? I am guaranteeing a profit on either side. So let's assume I put $10 on the Rams futures bet, just to make up a number, right? That means I would be getting back $80 if the Rams won.
Okay.
By putting $50 on the Bengals, I'd be getting back 45. So by doing so, I've covered my winnings on either end.
Okay.
Right?
In other words, you covered your backside. That'll make your wife happy.
Exactly. I've covered my backside and I still get the chance. Now, like I said, there's a 12% chance I win both bets because if the Rams, as has been the case in this playoff run, as you well know, William, a lot of these games, if not most of them, have been decided by one score. Right. And if the Rams end up winning by a field goal, for example, 2017, 23-20, then I win both bets. The Rams win the Super Bowl at my plus 800 and the Bengals win at plus 4.5. So then I double down and win both bets. So this is a can't lose Super Bowl personally for your pal, Big John. So let's be glad on that. But in general, if you had no futures bet on the game, William, I'd say take the Bengals plus 4.5. I feel very good about them covering the spread. I think the nerds so far on the site were 11-1 against the spread in the playoffs. Here's why. I love the Bengals in terms of their consistency heading into the game. A lot of people say, well, what about the regular season? Forget the regular season. That's done with. It's playoff time. Completely different beast. The Super Bowl is the equivalent of coming off a bye week. They've had 2 weeks off. Their tight end, Uzuma, is coming back. If this game was played normally, he'd be sitting. He's playing after 2 weeks rest, I think. So There's and Higbee, actually, the tight end for the Rams, is probably going to play as well, but he's a little bit banged up.
Higbee was just put on IR, I heard today.
Okay, so there you go. He's not going to make it through. So my point being is that now you've got the Rams and the Bengals. I like the Bengals. I think their running game is better. Their defense is playing inspired. Overall, if you look at the season numbers, the Bengals and the Rams, basically the same type of defense in terms of where they stood. I believe one was 17th overall, the other was 18th overall. So defensively, you would think the Rams had the advantage, but they really don't. If you look at their secondary for the Rams, they've got Jalen Ramsey and nobody else. They had to bring Eric Weddle out of retirement to start at safety for them.
My man, Eric. I know Eric from the San Diego days.
Yeah.
Not personally, but I mean, I followed him.
Right. And also he went to Baltimore. Great player in his day. He was sitting on his butt for 2 years and they brought him out of retirement. Okay. That tells you the condition of the LA secondary. So let's say Jalen Ramsey, you put him on Jamar Chase the whole game. Like, I don't think they will, but Ramsey says he's going to shadow Chase. I don't know if I'll see that the whole game. But who else do they have in that secondary? Nobody. Now look at the Bengals. They have a really solid secondary. Jesse Bates, Von Bell at safety, great pair of safeties. Then you've got Mike Hilton in the slot. So you've got and Eli Apple. Look, as a Giants fan, it kills me to say this. He's played well this year. After we got rid of him.
I was reading that Eli may be on an island on his own. That's how much confidence they have with him.
Yeah, he's played well. He's played well.
So he's playing up to his draft potential now.
Yes, because he's finally justifying that top 10 pick the Giants invested in him all those years ago.
Not for the Giants, but
not for the Giants, but yeah. All right. So I like the Bengals in this one. I also think the Bengals are going to come out and try to grind out a win. I think they have the best running back in the Super Bowl is on the Bengals. That's Joe Mixon. Make no mistake about it. He's the best running back from either team.
What about Cam?
Cam Akers isn't back 100%. If you've seen him play in the playoffs, he's just not Cam. You know, he's got the
attitude. Like Derrick Henry was for the Titans when he came back.
Yeah, I think
many fans don't realize that they're not machines. They don't come back at the same level where they got injured or dropped off.
Right. I agree with you. I think, look, it's a boost. It's good to have him in the lineup, but it's not an automatic dominance, you know. And Sony Michel is good. I think Sony Michel is good inside the red zone, inside the 5-yard line. I think you'll see Sony Michel. So Daryl Henderson, I don't know what you can expect out of him, but like when you look at the Bengals, they've got Mixon. Not only is he a hard-nosed runner, he's a decent receiver out of the backfield. Pirine, I hope I pronounced his name right. Pirine, the second runner for the Bengals, also quite capable, especially in the passing game. He's a big dude. He scored a touchdown against the Chiefs. You saw it last game. You know, took that, what was it, a 40-yard swing pass into the end zone. Really, really can be helpful. So I think that the Bengals, believe it or not, grind out a win. I'm
rooting for the Bengals, but one thing we haven't touched on that is always part of the issue is somebody who's never been to the Super Bowl. Now, granted, Matthew Stafford has never been to the Super Bowl. However, he's seen as a grizzled veteran after 10 years in the league. This is Joe Burrow's first time. What is it? Second, third year, I guess.
Is a second year. But here's the thing. I hear what you're saying, and
I'm just asking. Asking.
I hear what you're saying, though. It's a good point. But here's what I'm thinking. This is Stafford's first extended playoff run, right?
True.
So after all those years in Detroit, he had never even won a playoff game in Detroit. So when you think about guys who have been through it, I could make the argument that Burrow has had more big game experience than Stafford. If you consider his college career, like at LSU, he won that championship, the title game. Go ahead.
You hit something on the head. Most people don't realize Matthew Stafford at Georgia came in with huge expectations, and Georgia fell flat on their face. Kind of like Dan Marino, his final season at Pitt.
Yeah.
And my take is, I had never seen Matthew Stafford as a great leader. He's not somebody in the movie 300 who would rally the Spartans. They'd be like, I think I'm going to stay home, And that's how I've always viewed him.
Yeah.
Burrows overcame a lot and then not only did he overcome, he was like Spartacus, for example. He was like the king of Sparta at 300. And I'm putting this analogy there, but to me, it's great because it shows the difference in their core being. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Stafford. I'm just saying what I've seen from Stafford versus what I've seen from Burrows. And let's not forget, Burrows is coming back from that devastating injury. And this is a kid who was thrown on the ground, what was it, 8 or 9 times in the Titans game?
Yeah.
I mean, he not only took a beating, granted he's young, but you're right. I see a seasoned young, you can't call him a veteran, but a seasoned young warrior. Who is that humble warrior. Whereas I see Stafford with people continually making excuses for him. But he did deliver this year. So he proved me wrong. I did not think they'd make it to the Super Bowl. But obviously, I also believe Kyle Shanahan behind the scenes keeps giving games away for some reason.
And listen, Stafford's physical attributes off the chart. Like, he's got a hell of an arm.
No doubting that.
And listen, he has shown me flashes in his career of grit and leadership. Like, I'll never forget that game against the Browns a couple of years ago, where he basically drove them down the field with less than a minute and with a separated shoulder and refused to come out of the game. I mean, so I don't want people to think that we kind of paint him as sort of like a wuss, because that's not the situation.
Correct.
But as a pure leader, somebody who inspires others, you're right. I think Burrow seems to have that. He has a swagger to him. All the Bengals do, as a matter of fact, with like
even their place kicker.
Oh, that's like the damnedest thing I've seen in 10 years, at least.
And he's getting his own following versus, everybody, the fat couch potato who thinks he can manage a team better than a GM or even play better than Tom Brady. They're the first to criticize a kicker, yet they're jumping on the bandwagon too.
Money Mac, that's what they're calling him, Money Mac. And he's like, yeah, put it on me. But you know what? It's refreshing to see that in the kicker. And while I typically don't like that sort of braggadocio on the field, I like it in this kid because I think with kickers, it's all in the head. It's all in the head. That's why Vinatieri was so good. That's why Justin Tucker is so good. Like, nothing bothers
Prater,
him.
Elam.
Like, look at Mason Crosby. Like, he's great until he gets one of these yips in his head, and then he'll miss like the next 20 field goals for some reason. So it all depends to me on mental fortitude. So Bengals, I like them a lot in this game, but I'll also throw out another name at you, T. Higgins. Look out for T. Higgins, because if Jalen Ramsey does shadow Jamar Chase everywhere, I think Higgins is in for a huge game. He's going to eat up the rest of that secondary. And you can make the argument that the Bengals have 3 number 1 receivers.
Well,
Jamar Chase,
I'll be honest,
Higgins, and Boyd.
I feel bad for defenses in today's NFL, because you say Jalen Ramsey, and there's other greats you can talk about, but they always get burnt, not because of their lack of skill, but the way the rules are now set up for offenses.
Look,
but I'll say this though, as a fan, to see 30 some odd years since Cincinnati made it, and the misery that city and its fans have gone through, I think that's why people accept the kicker talking smack, the confidence this team, because they've been losers. They've been the sad sacks of the NFL. And not only that, the Brown family has been a disgrace up until the Marvin Lewis was brought on, because all they cared about was making a profit, which they did.
Right.
And I'll give you the last word before we move on.
Okay, let me give you my specialty bets, the prop bets for the game. So I gave you the Bengals plus 4.5. If you go out, you could bet that line. Here's another couple of them. These are individual player props, right?
Explain what a player prop is.
That means you're looking not at the outcome of the game, but the performance of a specific player, what they're going to do on the field. So for any touchdown, and this is just, you have to score a touchdown by either running it in or catching a ball in the end zone, right?
Right.
So I've got Joe Mixon who at scoring at least one touchdown during the game.
Okay.
And that proposition pays -110. So $10 will get you 9. And I think that's a very smart bet because, like I said before, I think Mixon's going to have a great game.
Hold on, $10 will get you $9.
Yeah.
Isn't that a $1
meaning
loss?
you get 9 back. Your total back is 19.
Okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Joe Mixon to have a touchdown and the Bengals winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
That prop is coming off at +280. All right. So $10 will get you 28 in winnings.
Okay.
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 So that's,
I get it.
So that's a nice one because I think if Mixon scores, the odds are the Bengals are winning. Jamar Chase, him scoring a touchdown at +110. So $10 will get you 11. I think that's a solid prop. These are all bets that I've placed myself on players. The other players.
I have one for you.
What's that?
All right, a question for you.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to move on for
Yeah.
time. I saw on Twitter some individuals were talking that Cooper Kupp was projected to have over 100 yards. I don't know if that's a problem for the audience. I don't gamble because I have an addictive personality.
Sure.
I have made one bet in my life and I won, and I'll tell you guys that maybe later today.
Sure.
But what do you think of that? Because when I saw 100 yards, but then they showed the numbers. That's what he's kind of been averaging. But I'm like, this is a Super Bowl. You figure they're going to do everything to stop him.
Right. So here's the thing. Sometimes when you take these bets, it's not a matter of what you think the player is going to get. It's what are the odds? What's the payoff? And is the risk worth the payoff? So Cooper Kupp at coming over 100, you've kind of caught me flat-footed, but off the top of my head, the odds were less than 1-to-1, meaning they were in the -150, -125, -120 range. And to me, that wasn't a smart bet. But you could pretty much bet on anything like that. Let me give you my last 4 very quickly. The Super Bowl MVP. Usually it's a quarterback. I'm putting some money, not a lot. I'm putting some money on Joe Mixon winning it.
I knew you were going to say that.
Joe Mixon if he wins the Super Bowl MVP, that's a +3,300 payout, meaning $10 gets you 330 in winnings. That to me is a great risk reward bet.
That's your dark horse bet there.
That's my dark horse bet. Then I have another bet. Most first downs in the game, I have the Bengals because I think they're going to grind it out. Even if they lose, they may still end up with more first downs than the Rams in the game. That's coming off at +150. I have the opening kickoff to be a touchback. I have that. Yes, you could even bet on that. So if the opening kickoff goes through the end zone, that's +115 for John.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one, I think, because everyone's hyped up. Yeah. And here's my super long shot. But I think the guy who might pull this off, believe it or not, is Odell Beckham. I took a prop that says any non-quarterback to throw a touchdown +1,100.
Well, if it was the 49ers, we know who it would be.
Right. It would be Debo. But here's the thing. Beckham, if you look at through his career, they love using him on a jet sweep. And then when he gets to the opposite corner, he throws it back across the field to some wide open guy.
Joe Burrow, Tom Brady style.
Well, not Tom Brady.
I'm just poking
like Beckham running to one end and then hitting Kupp on the other end, or Van Jefferson, to me is a play you could pull out if they're overselling like a slant or a sweep or something. So I've seen him do it with the Giants. I've seen him do it with the Browns. I think he may be able to do that with the Rams. So that's a +1,100 prop. Again, you don't bet the house on that. That's where you put a few units on and you say, if I win, I'm getting back 11 times my money. It's 11-to-1 odds. So exactly. Those are my Super Bowl bets. And if you follow them, great. If you win, even better. Send me a percentage as commission. If not, I'll lose my address.
And like I said, I don't gamble or else I would.
Yeah.
You know, I used to dominate in fantasy football.
Sure.
And people used to ask me, why don't you go to Vegas and bet some? Like I said, I made one bet and I did very well. But I was like, no. I do not have money I like to lose.
Right. Exactly. Okay, no, look, there's a lot of people who feel that way. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. The AP named Aaron Rodgers as its NFL Player of the Year. What are your thoughts on that? Well, now remember though, they're supposed to really look at the regular season and not their playoff play.
Right. No, I get that. Look, do I have a major problem with it? No, I don't. He did have a great year, and arguably he was probably the most important person to his team. So I get it. Here's two other names that popped into my head that I think, if you throw in the alternate factor of how important were they to their team, because it's most valuable player, not the guy with the best stats, right?
Right. That's a good point. It's a very important point that's rarely ever talked about.
Right. So to me, like I said, I can't complain about Rodgers, but to me, Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp had to be in that conversation. They had to be.
Well, I think Cooper Kupp's more a product. Now, this is really bad in terms of how you're going to see it towards receivers. Yeah. Receivers, to me, really don't qualify for MVP because they can't do it without a QB.
Well, a lot of people feel that way, but then I would say to you, what's a quarterback without an offensive line? What's a running back without an offensive line? So, I mean, you could make that argument for any position.
But the reason you can is you said offensive line. Those are 5 or 6 people.
That's okay, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I kind of understand where you're coming from, and I know back when I used to be part of the Pro Football Writers of America, we used to have these arguments all the time. So I do agree with you. I understand where you're coming from, and like I said, I don't have a problem with Rodgers, but I would have liked this. Look, if you don't believe in Kupp, what about Jonathan Taylor?
Well, let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't believe in Kupp. It's like, to me, a receiver's got to show more than just the stats, like you said. But hold on. I mean, Stafford was brought in for a reason, and he fulfilled that promise. So I just kind of view that situation differently. Jonathan Taylor, you're right. In fact, somebody sat there and was hammering on Taylor and comparing him to Christian McCaffrey, and legitimately showing how much better McCaffrey was a couple years ago. And my point was, leave the brother alone. He was exciting to watch, and he won some games for the Colts. And I just said that instinctively, not really watching as much football as I used to, but I knew enough about Taylor. So I can see that argument for Taylor. But at the end of the day, the Colts really kind of belly flopped with some of their losses.
They collapsed at the end of the year, but it wasn't Taylor's fault. And look, like I said, here's the only controversy I have with Rodgers. Honestly, a lot of this goes back to that Hub Arkush comment.
Hub is my former boss. For people
your former boss, and someone that may have plagiarized from Sports Grumblings back in the day. I'm not making any accusations. These are that's simply an opinion, William. But anyways, Hub Arkush, look, good guy. I mean, but here's the thing. He said out loud what a lot of people were thinking.
Right. No, not a lot. What they do think. And I know that firsthand. Absolutely. These individuals.
Absolutely. So without getting into whether or not you agreed with his opinion of Rodgers, right? When he came out and said, I'm never voting for Rodgers because of what he did off the field, right? It was
a political issue he was upset about. He's a liberal who made sports political in a specific instance he should not have.
I agree.
Again, I do like Hub a lot.
Yeah. And listen, look, it happens in baseball. Look, if you're trying to tell me that the only Roger Clemens is not in the Hall of Fame for anything other than what people are upset about, which is him taking steroids and doping and never admitting to it, then you're out of your mind. On performance alone, he belongs in the Hall of Fame, Roger Clemens, right? Look, on performance alone, Aaron Rodgers should have been in the running for MVP. There's no doubt. But to me, any hope that, and look, from what I understand, most people either had Rodgers or Kupp as their MVP, right?
Right.
So to me, any chance that Kupp had was obliterated when Hub Arkush opened his mouth, because he had the opposite effect. Now, sports writers had to vote for Rodgers, or else they would have to answer questions of, well, are you a closet conservative?
Liberal.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Are you a closet liberal because you voted against Rodgers?
Well, there are liberals, 95% of them, and they're not closet liberals. I go on a rampage on Twitter with some of their comments. It just burns me up. And I like these guys. I used to pay them. I went through approximately 100, maybe 150, 200 working for KFFL over a 10-year span. And you immediately saw that bias.
Well, look, it's not surprising to me. Most outlets do have a liberal slant. There's no doubt about that. I mean, anybody who denies that is just denying reality. They'll tell you they're even-handed, but they're not, you know. But my point was that by opening his mouth, hoping to damage Rodgers, probably, he had the opposite effect, in my opinion. I think any chance that Cup had went out the window with Hub's remarks.
Well, I do know Hub, and I don't think Hub said that to damage anybody. I just think Hub wasn't thinking in that moment and just honestly answered with how he felt. Look, I met Hub, and some people describe him as a 60s hippie. I never saw him that way because he was older when I met him, but he is truly one of the nicest guys. And even though I don't agree with him, he stopped following me when I started coming out with my more conservative takes. He's one of the kindest gentlemen I have ever met in my life. And I loved working for him, and I will never say a bad word about Hub, but that's just my biased opinion. Okay, so a final comment on Aaron Rodgers.
He deserves it. It would have been interesting to see if he would have won had Arkush not said what he said. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, I want to go to the Hall of Fame voting. A lot of great players got inducted. I'll never deny a player. We can always argue about who. Actually, everybody always argues about who didn't get in. Right. So,
wait a second. So, do you have the list of who made it in? Do you want to read that off?
Oh, no, I don't. I'll tell you what, as we talk, I will look that up. But I did want to talk about one player specifically who did not get in. And I never took notice of this player at all because I viewed him as an overachiever. I viewed him as somebody who climbed mountains and conquered. He was an inspiration to the average guy who couldn't do it well. I used to joke to my Anglo friends, "Hey, there's your guy there, Zach Thomas."
So I was going to say, you must be talking about a white guy.
Zach Thomas. But it wasn't just that. It was his size. I mean, he was
smaller. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would never have even thought, if somebody sat there and said, "So William, what do you think? Zach Thomas Hall of Fame?" I would say, "Nah, not Zach Thomas," because I never paid attention to his numbers. Then I saw his numbers this year, and I was like, "Oh my God!" So listen to this: Brian Erlacker, first round pick, number 9 overall. Zach Thomas, 5th round pick, number 154 overall. And bear with me here.
Sure.
Solo tackles: Erlacker, 1,000. Okay, first of all, 184 games for Zach Thomas. 182 games for Brian Erlacker. So in essence, they played pretty much the same amount of games.
Yeah, same career.
1,100 solo tackles for Zach Thomas. 1,040 for Brian Erlacker. Check goes to Thomas. Assists: 627 for Zach Thomas. 314 for Brian Erlacker. Check Zach Thomas. Interceptions: 17 Zach Thomas, 22 Erlacker. Check Erlacker. Now, that category is kind of close to the point where I'm like, okay, to me, it's about the same, not because I'm a Zach Thomas fan, but interceptions are pretty much, they're kind of random. You know, you got to be in the right place at the right time.
Right. Well, to your point there, it's interesting when you compare statistics because I agree with you. So obviously we're old enough to have remembered these guys playing, right? And when you think of it, look, Erlacker came to the NFL as an undersized linebacker or as a big safety, depending on what your outlook was, right? Now, what made Erlacker great, in my opinion, were his coverage skills. I thought he was great at everything. His coverage skills were very good. So the interceptions, he had 5 more than Thomas, but I would be interested in seeing his cover skills, his passes defense, passes, PBUs, things like that. Zach Thomas, on the other hand, came in as a Jimmy Johnson favorite, right? He got into Miami and he won that job. Nobody expected him to stick, right? Only Jimmy Johnson saw something in him.
Jimmy Johnson drafted him?
I think so, yeah.
I don't remember.
I could be wrong, but look, if he didn't draft him, he certainly flourished under Jimmy Johnson. So Jimmy Johnson saw something in Zach Thomas.
Well, let me continue on here. This is an important category that I believe is predominantly on the player. Forced fumble: 16 Zach Thomas, 11 Brian Erlacker.
Yeah.
Sacks: 20 and a half Zach Thomas, 41 and a half Brian Erlacker. And that's where Erlacker differentiates himself from Zach Thomas. And that's one point that nobody can argue. Touchdowns for each. And that to me is like interceptions, right?
Exactly. Very random. Yeah.
But that said, for Zach Thomas to be his 9th year and not get in, to me is a travesty. I see. Because remember this, the Hall of Fame is not just about stats. It's about what did you bring to the game.
Right.
And there is no other player. I'm not going to say there's no other player, but Zach Thomas is one of those unique players that embodies the spirit of not just football and achieving greatness, but also overcoming his own deficiencies, meaning the
shortcomings. You mean? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So to me, that is who you want in the Hall of Fame. It's kind of like Kurt Warner. He went from a stock boy to a legend in football and an uber legend in fantasy football.
No, I agree with you. Look, I love Zach Thomas as a player. I love Brian Erlacker as a player. I think they both wore the same jersey number. I think they both wore 54, if I'm not mistaken. But listen, to me,
yes, they did. You got a great memory there.
There 54. You go. But here's my thing. Erlacker's not in the Hall, right? Or is he?
No, I think he is in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, so he's in the Hall.
First ballot.
Yeah, so he's in the Hall. The only argument would be that you would say to yourself, was Thomas as dominant a player when he played as Erlacher was when he played? And I know there's some overlap in their career in terms of when the years they played.
But here's the thing I would say about Erlacher, because I'm sorry about Zach Thomas. Their defense was no secret. It was like, this is how we're going to line up. Y'all got to beat us. And Erlacher, Thomas would still get his numbers.
Yeah.
I think part of the downside with Zach Thomas is as great as Jimmy Johnson was with the Cowboys, he had a pipeline when he went from college to the Cowboys. So his early draft classes were spot on.
Incredible, yeah.
Once he lost that through time, I knew he would be exposed at Miami. He would not flourish. He would not prosper. And he would be seen for what he really was. And that's exactly what happened. Those were mediocre teams. Zach Thomas and Jason Taylor really embodied the Dolphins in that era, but overall they were forgettable teams.
I don't disagree. Yeah, that's certainly true. And the other thing, you read off the guy's assist numbers. Now, here's a dirty little secret most people aren't aware of. The NFL statistics are very wonky. Until Pro Football Reference got a hold of them and started doing archival work. For example, nobody knows how many sacks Deacon Jones really had.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right?
That was before they started tracking.
So that's what I'm saying, right? Like, it's not the same type of stats tracking that you have in baseball. Say, baseball, you could go back to the 1800s, and their stats are golden, right?
Yes.
The NFL is a little bit wonkier. So, for example, a lot of people didn't know that until recently, maybe 5-6 years ago, assists were decided by each team. So basically the NFL, the statisticians would go to each team. They'd go to the Dolphins and say, hey, how many assists did you give Zach Thomas today? And they go like 15, they would come up with a number. And as fantasy football players, especially IDP, individual defensive players, back in the day, that was one of my specialties. One of the first things I did was identify teams that are generous with their tackle and assist numbers, because even mediocre players will get an assist just for being anywhere near the ball.
Right.
There were some teams that were well known for this. One were the Dolphins. The other one was the Falcons back in the day. All their players had high assist numbers. And there might have been one or two others. So
hold on. So what you're saying is maybe he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame?
I'm saying that.
Come on, John, put it on the line.
You're putting me in a tough spot.
It's the whole purpose, brother.
Because honestly, I hold the Hall of Fame as being really for the greats. Like, there's some guys that are in there that I don't know that I would have put in there. So.
But I agree. But here's my issue. Everybody saw the greatness of Gale Sayers, but he only played 3 years.
Yeah, essentially.
Does he deserve to be in with only 3 years?
Terrell Davis
deserves to be in. You know why? Because without him, it's no secret. There is no Super Bowl in Denver. He was the piece they were lacking.
You can make that argument.
Hold
see
on.
it.
That's all we ever heard of.
Yeah,
Well,
with
they don't
Elway.
have a running game. They don't have a running game. Not
you're
only
right.
did they get a running game, they got Terrell Davis 1,000-yard back. Now, don't you think Marina would have loved Terrell Davis?
Oh, please, yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna leave this topic here. You're questionable on
I'm
Thomas.
50-50. I would vote no.
Will
Only
you be
because
one of these hacks I write about?
maybe. Listen, the only reason I would vote no, so you're asking me to commit. My commitment would be to no, unless there was a year where there was nobody else worthy. So
yeah, see, that's just it. This coming year, a lot of big names are going to be eligible.
Yeah.
My point is simple. The Hall of Fame is not only about statistics, it's what you meant to the game and to the team. And that's why I believe Terrell Davis should have been a lock, period. Because with that, he helped bring a Super Bowl that John Elway could not.
Okay, so here's the
Zach Thomas is a Hall of Fame.
So you're voting yes.
Voted.
I'm voting no. And here's the one to start thinking about for the next show. Does Eli Manning belong in the Hall of Fame? Don't answer.
That's right.
Let's tease that one, because that's the next great debate. You and I both know that's the next great debate is, does Eli Manning deserve to get in the Hall of Fame?
But here's why I say,
well, don't say
Hall
anything.
of Fame writers are hacks. No, because they're going to vote for the Mannings. It's just that they love the Mannings, most of them. So
I don't know.
So that's what I mean by the bias. Okay, real quick though, before we move on.
Sure.
So congratulations to one I would not have voted yes on, Tony Baselli.
Okay.
He was a tackle. To me, too short a career, was always injured. The Jaguars a tackle, correct?
Yeah, he was good when he played though.
Exactly.
He was good when he played.
That was a problem. Wide receiver Cliff Branch, safety Leroy Butler.
Sure.
Art McNally, he's an official.
Yep.
Linebacker Sam Mills, and Zach Thomas's numbers are just as good and better than Sam Mills.
Sam Mills is another one like Zach Thomas. I don't know if I mean
exactly. Sam Mills is no, but I also like Sam Mills.
I love Sam Mills.
And Sam Mills, what makes him great, before we move on to the others there, is he helped in making the Saints a legitimate NFL team. People forget they were nothing but a laughing stock for many years. Oh,
man. And that linebacking core, Sam Mills.
Exactly, with Sam Mills and a couple others.
Ricky Jackson, Pat Swilling. Those guys were a terror. Like, I put them up there with the Bears linebackers from the 85 Bears. I put them up there with the Giants linebackers from the 86 team. I put
really them up there with the best of the John Madden great teams in the Sega Genesis at the time.
Sure, why not? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and congratulations to defensive tackle, defensive end Richard Seymour, head coach Dick Vermeil, always beloved by his players, and I was happy to see him win his Super Bowl after getting so close so many times. And defensive tackle, defensive end Bryant Young, and there we have it.
Yeah.
So as you know, we talk politics and sports, and we're going to talk something about America's future. Everybody says the future are the kids.
Sure.
And right now, school choice is coming. It came out from left field because prior to COVID, school choice and vouchers would always soundly be defeated by Democrats and the teachers unions. The teachers unions funding the Democrat Party. Democrats always voting for it. What people don't realize and what's happening now is Republicans are being exposed for not promoting school choice. And the reason school choice is starting to come to the forefront is for the simple fact that with remote learning, we all saw as a nation that many teachers were not teaching, they were indoctrinating, to the point some teachers did not want parents allowed to watch remote learning because they didn't want to see what they were teaching. And that started to drive parents to go, what are you doing? That's not your job. That's my job. And it's gone so far as to individuals getting in trouble for telling the kid, don't tell your parent we gave you the COVID shot. Don't tell your parents about your new gender identity that we talked you into accepting. I mean, they're being exposed, and school choice is really being pushed hard, and many states are starting to bring it to the table for discussion. But we're seeing Republican leaders, some of them aren't, and we're also learning that some of them have accepted school teachers' money. Now, what's your take on it? As I know you're a big Milton Friedman fan, and Milton Friedman was a big believer in school choice or school education, at least. And for me, it's kind of personal because I believe the same way.
Yeah.
I believe Frederick Douglass said it best. Education is emancipation. And he meant it for blacks, but to me, that is, I don't care if you're in the ghetto, in the barrio, or in the trailer parks.
Sure.
Education is one of the best avenues for the poor to get out of the poverty circle.
Yeah.
And I see a lack of vouchers and being forced to stay in a bad public school system as a detriment. So to see elitists, people, and that's the other thing, many of these politicians who are against it, where do their kids go to school
Private
at?
schools. Private
Exactly.
schools,
What's your take, Big John?
Well, here's the thing, William. Not only am I a pro school choice, I am pro school choice to the extent that I don't believe in public education. I don't think education should have anything to do with the government. I don't think we should be funding schools through the public tax system. I think you go back to schools being founded in communities by parents, by educators, and then let the chips fall where they may. You'll have good schools and bad schools. But here's the difference. Now you have bad public schools, and a lot of them are bad, trust me.
Right.
That are there as babysitting institutions on the primary school level, and parents are locked into them. They're locked into them.
Now, to chastise the parents a little bit.
Chastise them a lot.
That's right. They wanted that because we now live in a dual income world. And so both parents would work and they just assumed the schools would be teaching. So they really didn't pay attention.
Right. Well, that's part of the problem too. You need to have parents who are involved. And I understand it's difficult. Don't get me wrong. But here's the thing. People say, well, how would kids learn? Well, you hate the poor, Big John. They'll never get an education. Listen, that's a crock. That's a crock. The free market provides. You would have schools that would be low income schools, right? They wouldn't be the greatest schools, but you'd get the basics done. You'd get more done. How do bad institutions become better? By attracting better employees, better teachers. How do you do that? By rewarding good teachers, by firing bad teachers. That's how you improve things. The free market provides this for us. Nobody has to figure it out. The free market as its own organism figures this out. So, in my opinion, much like Milton Friedman, get rid of public school. The Department of Education should be abolished. The best thing
people
about
don't realize the Department of Education just came into being in the 70s.
1979. Yeah.
Right. So it's not really an institution that's been around for decades.
No.
And if you look at the data, since the Department of Education was instituted, it's pathetic.
Yeah, and it's not just grade schools. High schools and colleges are in the same boat. Get rid of it. There should be no Department of Education. It's nothing but bureaucracy. They don't look out for children. They look out for themselves. The teachers' unions, the school construction authorities, like for every dollar you give them, they only spend 30 cents on building stuff for kids.
Well, to make it worse, John,
all of it.
In New York City, they have classrooms filled throughout the city of teachers who can't teach because they're on trial or
they're called rubber. They're called the rubber rooms.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. I mean, you have accused pedophiles.
Oh, sure.
There, yeah, because they have tenure. They can't. I mean, so we are wasting money, and I do believe that the Department of Education should be abolished because school is a state, and even then, it's more of a local issue.
Oh, I agree 100%. And listen,
and you're not going to get rid of public schools, but I do believe
you should.
That
you should get rid of them.
No, but I'm saying you're not because the system won't allow it. But what I'm saying is what can happen are these vouchers be given to parents so they can sit there and send their kids to a school that actually can educate their children. And that will create competition. And if that public school wants to compete, they will do exactly what you were talking about that you and Milton Friedman advocate. But you know what they're saying? You can't send tax dollars to private schools. I'm like, well, what are Pell Grants?
Yeah, well, here's a better question for you. Why steal the money from parents to begin with? You wouldn't have to send it to a private school if you didn't steal their money for education to begin with. That's shitty education.
Well, that's a bigger topic for another day. I know where you're heading with that.
Yeah, but I'll give you my personal story. my parents were not well off. Okay. My father was an auto mechanic. He didn't have his own garage. He worked for someone else. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. The first day they sent me to public school, here's Big John, who at the time was Little Big John. And we went, and my mother took me to register me for the kindergarten class in the local school, the public school. First day I set foot in the school, I get jumped by two kids with my mother watching.
Wow.
One of them held a knife to my throat. Okay. I couldn't have been kindergarten. So what was I, 6 years old, 7 years old?
5.
Whatever. Yeah. My mother took me home. I could hear her crying with my father overnight. My father said, but we can't afford this. We can't afford that. You know what they did? We scrimped, we saved. They sent me to a private school, a church-run parochial school. And they said, you better learn to be smart because we're spending all our money on you.
Yeah.
And then, and you know what? That education to this day has set me straight. I learned ancient Greek. I learned to read and write Latin. I learned to do high school level math by the 6th grade. By the time I graduated, I got into a selective high school. What I'm trying to get, it's not that I'm smart. It's that my parents recognized where to invest their money in me. Okay.
Right.
So, and there were no vouchers. So they were still paying taxes for schools, local schools, right? My sister, the same thing. My sister is a Barnard graduate. She's an Ivy League graduate, and she got there all on scholarship, and it all stemmed from the same parochial school. So part of it is the parents. I'm not saying you have to be wealthy, but part of it is the parents. Most of the local parishes who run schools will work out a deal with you. They'll see, like, if you're serious about educating your kid, they will work something out with you, a payment plan, a reduced payment, something. They will work something out.
Everybody jokes about that Catholic nun with the rulers smacking your hand. And I'm like, maybe so, but you knew how to add 1 + 1 = 2. You knew how to logically think, if I hit that girl, that nun's going to hit me. You know, I mean, you learn not only values, you learn STEM. You know, you learn how to add, you learn the sciences, you know, you learn how to read, you learn how to write. You know, there was an article that came out in a couple years ago, young Black males, it's something like 75% of them couldn't properly read at an adequate level, graduating high school. You had in Atlanta, the teachers falsifying the data of the school, of the numbers of graduates and how they were doing so they could get bonuses. You know, it's a lot of these politicians, as we said, who are against the voucher program, send their kids to private school. You know, when I remember Chris Wallace attacking the NRA president, you say I'm an elitist, and I'm hollering, yes, you send your damn kids to the same school Obama's girls go to. Yes, you're an elitist, Chris, but they don't see themselves that way. Here's a comment where Wisconsin Representative Lee Snodgrass said this: if parents want to have a say in their child's education, they should homeschool or pay for private school tuition out of their family budget. And the reason that stings is with the way government's going, with inflation, with the way the unions don't teach, with the way the government has promoted minorities to, hey, being a single mom's okay. Government's your husband, where they're just struggling with one job to pay the bills and living off check to check. These are people who, unlike your parents, you see, there's a difference. And I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but there is a difference between an immigrant's mentality and an American who's been here for generationally. It's sad to say, but my mother, coming from Panama, boy, she understood. Yeah. I'll never have this opportunity in Panama. So she pulled our family in Panama from poverty into middle class with the help of her factory job that eventually left because they took all the jobs at China in manufacturing, you know. So this lady, Representative Lee Snodgrass, deleted the tweet. I mean, there's other ones. In Alabama, Senator Tom Butler, who is against school choice. He received $25,000 from the teachers union. Now, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're supposed to hold the standards of the party, you know, up to yourself and when you represent your constituents. In most states, the Republican plank, it talks about representing the child, you know, education first, you know. So this is the definition of a rhino. You know, you're a Republican in name only.
It is, but like, to me, I don't even look at party politics anymore because I
But-
think they're the same party, quite honestly. But
But see, but that's the problem, John, because when you say that, but that's the problem is it is about party politics. It's like the Republican who tells me, usually a white person, and it infuriates me, I don't see color. I see an American. And I'm like, yeah, in war, we don't always dictate the battlefield, but when there's war, we go to that battlefield. In politics, that battlefield has been identity politics. And your belief, I don't see color. Well, Democrats did, and that's why we're in the mess we are today. And most minorities vote Democrat because they courted them with lies while you kept to your mantra.
well,
You know, so ignorance is, or ignorance, or the high morality of this is what I believe. That's what kills us in the end in war.
Well,
in this country, it's killing our country.
well, it doesn't, William. And I know you're passionate about this, but here's the thing: you have to ask yourself something. If the fight fundamentally changes you, is it a fight? Is it a Pyrrhic victory? In other words, is it a false victory, right? Because, and I say this about my Trump friends, okay? And I still have friends who are Trumpers. I'm not. But here's the thing. You know that one of my core issues with people who support Trump, one of my core issues is that his policies, not his personality, which I also have a problem with, but his issues, his policies are largely leftist. And most people who voted for Trump don't realize that. So my question is to you, when you have this loyalty to a side, when you have a loyalty to your tribe, to your party, whatever you want to call it, and this is what Jordan Peterson, for example, always warns about, is your loyalty so binding that it prevents you from seeing the corruption within? So you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. But see, you're confusing my passion for this issue as loyalty to the Republican Party. It's completely not true.
Okay.
I'm calling out the Republican Party for their own hypocrisy.
Fair
I'm
enough.
calling out the American who only sees Americans and not color for being an idiot, because while they're doing that, we're losing the battle of schools, of our education and
Fair
our
enough.
kids.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, every issue, honestly, Republicans locally do not like me, some of the leaders, because I call them out.
You've told
You know?
me that, yeah.
And for the record, I see libertarians as too black and white. You guys are the first ones who get whacked in the real world.
Sure.
Because of your beliefs. That's not how the world works. The world works this way, America. The strong take from the weak. Period. Since the dawn of time, that's how it's been. So when I hear illusions of grandiose from libertarians of a utopia, it's kind of like the Democrats believe in a utopia of socialism because we just got to find the right people. Right. I am more pragmatic. And that doesn't mean I don't believe in libertarianism, because right. There are aspects of individual rights I believe that libertarians. The problem is what you accuse others of, I see in you as a libertarian as well.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Damn right.
I don't claim to be perfect, but that's why we're here.
Am I? And
let's you know, but see, I love this. To me, this is what it's all about. It's the dialogue, right? It's the exchange of ideas without yelling at each other, without necessarily, like, we have conflict, you and I. Trump is probably our biggest one, right? But
actually, I agree with you a lot with the great white joke at times. But I look at what he did for the economy. Let me give you one more example before we move on, and that you would agree with. The problem with party politics and falling in love with your party and not holding the individual accountable is twofold. One, we're like groupies. I have seen this firsthand. Sure. A Republican candidate comes in, or an actual elected representative, and they shake the hand of that grassroots person. All of a sudden, that politician walks on water to that grassroots because they connected. I saw this with my father-in-law, who's a staunch, hardcore leftist with Gillibrand. He met her, shook her hand. There's nothing she could do wrong. I used to really crank him up by making jokes about her. But that's one issue. The other issue are the people in the party. So, for example, there's a hardcore leftist Black politician here who was close. She was like, I've had it with the Democrats in education, but she refused to work with conservatives who believe the same way because they weren't part of the party. You know, so
Right. I
they're
mean,
cutting
yeah.
each other's throats. What's it saying? To spite themselves, or however the saying is.
What was that? Biting your nose to spite your face?
Yeah, or something like that. But my point is that's where I agree with you. I'm like,
Yeah.
you don't put party ahead of the issue. You work together as constituents, because that's how they win over us, both Republicans and Democrats. And the final point on that is everybody thinks little Johnny is down the street. They don't think their kids are little Johnny, that little Johnny lives down the street. Every kid is little Johnny. What I mean by that is, in politics, it's the same way. If you look at all the polling, everybody hates politicians, yet they reelect their politician by up to 90% for Congress. Why? They think it's not their politician, it's the other politician that's a corrupt one.
Yeah, so, I agree.
So until people think like us individually, but also realize that part of the problem is a lack of education and critical thinking that is being stopped by mostly Democrats, by also some key Republicans, we're not going to improve. So I guess we're kind of like talking in circles, but at the end of the day, we both know what the solution is: education and to think for ourselves. Agreed. And the final caveat that Milton Friedman always proposed: I'm not going to deny that capitalism is greed, but show me what other form of an economy has thrust more people out of the poverty circle into a viable life and success than capitalism. So there's so much we have to learn from one another, but we've got to sit there and look in the mirror first. I'm sorry to have sat there and taken over the conversation.
That's okay.
That comes from me from seeing my family in the third world under a dictator where we had none of these options. So to see Americans kind of, for lack of a better word, pissing that away just infuriates me. Both whether you're white, black, Asian, Native American, or whatnot. Nobody any longer wants to be seen as American first.
I agree.
That's the core of the problem. Anyway. Sorry to have sat there and stepped on you there.
That's
okay.
Any
final words about it, about school choice, Milton Friedman, or what your thoughts on that?
100% school choice. Get rid of public education. Get rid of Department of Education. More power to the individual. That's a libertarian's mantra. More power to the individual.
And we'll reveal more of what we're doing as we go along. But until then, we'll talk to you guys next week. Y'all enjoy your Super Bowl weekend.
$1 billion.